Hello, what is up ladies and gentlemen, I am the one and only Maxi here, and I am back for some more yet again for the likes of the Maxi Toys videos. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back for some more of Let's Play of Banjo-Tooie for the Nintendo 64/Xbox Live Arcade, from the likes of the Xbox 360, Xbox One, and of course Xbox Series X/Series S. So, last time we basically managed to go started with the game while able to actually defeat the first boss in the game, which is Klungo, and also we did manage to get our first Jiggy throughout the whole entire adventure, and also we did manage to explore around on the forms of the Isle of Heeks, as far as I'm aware. So today, for this episode, is the fact that we're about to get started with the first main world of the game by the forms of Mayahem Temple. You know, kind of like similar to the forms of Mumbo Mountain from the likes of the original game, except the fact that this place is going to be 10 times as huge in comparison to the forms of Mumbo Mountain for sure. So either way, as I mentioned this before, that Jinjo also makes a return from the likes of the original game. However though, you need to collect a certain amount of those specific colored Jinjos, because if you grab a certain amount of them while you're able to actually just try to explore the majority of the forms of certain worlds throughout, then chances are you would be able to actually decide to bring them into their family homes. So, for instance, the first Jinjo we've discovered is the Black Jinjo. In this case, the new colored variation of Jinjo. So, I totally see why that was actually new. So, either way though, because of that though, one thing is something to keep that in mind, is that each and every single world does manage to retain randomized colored Jinjos to collect. So it doesn't matter if depending if you have a first time playing the game or go into a new file and stuff like that. Actually, I'll get to more on that in a second, because as you can see, I've got my another achievement, and meaning about the fact that, as you can see, some of these notes do make a return from the likes of the original game. Now, you remember the forms of the original game, that basically, in order to actually go and proceed to Gruntilda's lair, that you have to collect a certain amount of those musical notes, and then you use them to unlock these note doors. Whilst this time around though, in this game in particular, in order to use with musical notes this time around, is that if you meet up with the new character in the game by the forms of Jamjars, or Jamjars as far as I like to pronounce his name, so because of that, he is basically equivalent to Bottles, like he can to teach you how to learn new moves. Yes. As I mentioned this before, there are new movesets to follow, so because of that though, hopefully we're able to achieve some more moves eventually throughout the majority of this playthrough. So because of that though, the first ever movesets we're actually gonna come across into, actually I'll get to more in a moment, because from the looks of it though, his voice is very similar to Luigi's voice from the likes of the Super Mario World cartoon, which, I don't know what his actor was his name though, just because it has been a very, very, very long time since I actually did manage to watch the Mario cartoons in the past, like usually since when I was like a youngin' or something, so that could mean possibilities of anything else to be more specific. So anyway, so the first move we're able to actually stumble across into, and that is the fact that, well, first of all, that he's trying to tell us that, yes, we do need to collect some musical notes in order to actually just to collect a certain amount, and basically that since we actually got enough notes for my first lesson. So the first moveset we're able to stumble across is the Egg Aim. And basically, if you go into a first-person view, and basically there's actually a lock-on cursor this time around, and basically you can to shoot the eggs from the actual distance or something. So yeah, that's actually pretty handy though, especially until later on. So because of that though, and yeah, much like in Banjo-Kazooie, that basically I'll try to collect everything in the game, including the forms of every single musical note, in addition to the forms of, well, Jiggies and all that stuff. Because the only thing is though, is the fact that unlike the original game, basically those Jiggies are pretty easy to get. Like specifically if you stumble across certain puzzle elements and all the other stuff, and even some platforming skills every once in a while. Well, this game in particular, this time, is the fact that getting these Jiggies are a lot harder this time around, which I guess is a good thing, because obviously we need to add a challenge to the mix, so that way you can to actually get used to it, the forms of well, basically everything throughout the game offers us to. And as you can see, we stumbled across the forms of a weird key item, which basically represents the note keys. Now, speaking of these collectibles this time around with those musical notes in mind, these musical notes can be found as in, like, you get 5 of them in each pack. So meaning about the fact that while the collection system can be a bit downgraded, but regardless of everything else though, it might be pretty easy to able to actually search for them. Well, specifically in Mayahem Temple, it's actually pretty easy, because obviously they are on a pretty simple path to take. So, yeah, you probably get the idea about the forms of the collection system. So because of that, and of course the honeycomb extra pieces do make a return from the original game, which I'll discuss more about that until whenever we continue proceeding for this game. So of course, we stumbled across our first Jiggy challenge when it comes to the forms of the mission objective, that we have to get rid of the forms of those pesky flies to be able to actually leave that cow alone. And basically, all we have to do, we have to activate the first-person shooter mode, in this case the egg aim mode, and that way we can able to shoot those flies and just kill them. So that's all you really have to do here. So because of that, and yeah, like I mentioned this before, that there's no extra life system this time around, which I guess is a good thing, because mostly you can die as many times you want to this time around. Like, basically, that's essentially how this goes when it comes to exploration and all that. Well, mind you, it kind of does a similar thing from Mario Odyssey and stuff like that, except while you lose coins if you take a death and stuff, but I digress. So if you manage to able to get rid of all these pesky flies, then the Jiggy itself will be yours. So, once again, there are 10 of them in each world, so because of that though, yeah, unfortunately though, there is no victory fanfare this time around though. Unlike the original game, it was quite charming in the original game, that basically after when you obtain a Jiggy, assuming you're on the ground, basically Kazooie just managed to eat the whole Jiggy, while Banjo just managed to do a pretty cool victory fanfare whenever he obtains one. So yeah, that's actually kind of where they get this thing absent this time around, which I guess it's like, I don't know what do I think about it. So either way though, the next ability that we've learned, and that is the forms of kind of the same thing as egg aim, except it only becomes situational, or to be more specifically, it's always mandatory if you go to certain locations. For instance, were we able to actually enter in the forms of the Tarkazin Temple, and basically we actually going to be playing GoldenEye? Well, except the fact that we're actually going to be no longer holding guns. Instead, we're actually going to be holding Kazooie as in the forms of pretending an egg gun. So, yeah, I guess it's kind of similar to both, not only GoldenEye, but also Perfect Dark as well. So because of that, though, because both of those games also made by Rare. So because of that, though, I just want to classify that. So in these segments right there, we need to collect a certain amount of those green little face-like jewelry stuff before you're able to continue proceeding for this. And what do I mean by that? Well, basically, that the reason why I say 20 of these things is because one of them requires you to get 10 of them in order to be able to actually enter in one of those rooms, and another room for 20 of those things. So hopefully we should be able to find those during time, and yeah, you probably get the idea about that. So yeah, today's day is of course the 3rd of September today, in this case in 2021. Some plenty of stuff I would like to discuss upon, and that is the fact that yes, more game news or anything else to be more specific. So because of that, while I was trying to able to explore around in the forms of the temple itself, let's get into the first discussion, and that's the forms of more infos on Super Monkey Ball Banana Mania. And by all means by that, we actually got ourselves not one, but 2 new DLC characters are coming to Super Monkey Ball Banana Mania. Now, we've already got one from the likes of the forms of, well, it wasn't until it was going to come out until November that it appears to be by the forms of one of those characters in Persona 5. And usually that'll be on its way. And by the way, those DLC characters needs to be paid, by the way, so I just want to classify that. So yeah, don't get your hopes up for this too much, because obviously unlike certain modern Sonic games, to be more specifically Sonic Forces and stuff, that everything else is for free. Well, mind you, a few exceptions, but regardless of everything else though, is the fact that if you're trying to able to get Episode Shadow, or Supersonic mode for that matter, despite the fact that it's lacking in story progressioning. So because of that, if you really want to able to experience those specific stuff, then more power to you. So because of that, How do I open the door? Because I know it has been such a long while since I actually did manage to able to play this game from time to time on the N64 version. But as far as I'm concerned, that we have to press the A button in order to able to open up the door. So yeah, I was gonna be thinking about that. So yeah, I do apologize for that. So anyway, we stumbled across the only white Jinjo. So since we actually obtained the white Jinjo, so this means that, well, obviously they'll be the only one, and somehow every time whenever you grab the Jinjo for the first time, basically, that we actually able to actually see that little cinematic scene, and basically white Jinjo only got one for that particular White House. So, and since we actually rescue one of the Jinjos in their specific color specific, then we get ourselves another Jiki. So how about that? So, yeah, anyway, let's get to the forms of the discussion about the Super Monkey Ball Banana Mania DLC characters. And those are Hello Kitty, which is not that surprising, but hey, at least it's kind of cool to be able to actually see her in action in the actual Monkey Ball game nonetheless. And also, we got ourselves the obscure character from the likes of another one of those franchises. I wasn't keen on it first, but, usually they've now showed this up because of the forms of usually parts of the Sega franchise or something, and one of them is actually evolves around the one-eye creature that comes from Monster Ranger. So yeah, that's actually pretty cool, and especially noticeable that, well, as far as collectibles are concerned, depending on what characters you're going to be playing as, I believe Hello Kitty just managed to able to grab apples as opposed to bananas, which is a unique twist from the likes of the actual collectibles and all that stuff, which, you know, kind of like Sonic and Tails, only grabs rings and beats from Jet Set Radio, always grabs the graffiti, and also other one of those characters managed to grab some of these scrolls and what have you. I'm not exactly sure about the forms of the Sega consoles as playable characters, like the Dreamcast, Mega Drive, Saturn, or Master System for that matter, that does manage to able to have their own specific collectibles to collect. But then again, we'll have to wait and find out until when that game finally comes out on, you know, multiple platforms until next month, actually. Well, to be more specifically, I would classify for saying likely 32 days or something. So because of that, yeah, we're actually getting pretty close to the actual release of the game now. Speaking of the forms of the actual new stuff they actually include, recently, Mario Party Superstars just managed to able to reveal 2 new minigames they'll able to make it bring in return. Like, for instance, one from Mario Party 4, which I'm very glad that was the case, and that's what appears to be Money Belts. So, yeah, I'm actually very glad that Money Belts is actually going to be making a comeback, well, with gorgeous HD. The only thing I'm really not hoping for is the fact I'm hoping that they will not include Candlelight Flight. Although, assuming if they're able to fix the problems that what the original version had, but then again, that we have to wait until likely also for about almost a month left, so. But anyway, and also they bring back Monty's Revenge from the likes of, not only from Mario Party 7, but also, well, the top 100, so. But this time around though in gorgeous HD, and plus DK or Donkey Kong will experience the Mario Party 7 minigames for the very first time. So because of that, well, no need to play any of these Donkey Kong-like minigames and all that stuff though, because obviously Donkey Kong is still playable in Mario Party Superstars, which I'm very glad. Especially noticeable that unlike the top 100, that for whatever reason he's not playable on that game. Despite the fact that in Mario Party 10 and Star Rush to be extent, that you can able to play as Donkey Kong. Well, usually you get him from the get-go in Mario Party 10, but in Star Rush though you have to unlock him by doing the actual party level system. So yeah, I guess that makes it obvious. So anyways, as you can see, that we managed to able to get all 20 of those little green jewelry stuff after all. So this means that in addition to able to actually entering one of those rooms, but also another room, which let's take the right one first. And since we actually onto the right portion, slightly secret chamber, and this means that we get ourselves what else? Another one of the Jiggies. So how's that for that? So anyway, and another thing I want to discuss upon, what in terms of the forms of the gaming news and stuff like that, recently that Sony PlayStation has just announced there's going to be another presentation, but rather than becoming the forms of, well, the forms of the state of play directs and stuff like that. No, instead they were able to actually do the presentation of the PlayStation Showcase, so which is going to be mainly focusing on PlayStation 5 for the majority of the whole entire presentation. So I'm fine with that. Well, despite the fact that I still haven't got the PlayStation 5 because it's quite hard and pretty difficult to find right now, unless it's somewhat common in most stores, but I digress. So here's the forms of the next boss fight in this game. As you can see, here's the forms of Targazan, and basically the entire battle is pretty simple. Basically, you're gonna be able to shoot his targets, and next thing you notice is the fact that the more you're able to shoot the targets, then you're able to actually be taken down. Although along the way though, until in multiple phases, basically that he'll start to summon the forms of his minions by, that he was trying to get me. So, yeah, I do apologize for that awkward commentary for a moment there, just because, well, I somehow belched, so that's pretty gross, so, yeah, whatever. And anyway, yeah, it's a pretty simple, easy boss fight. You have to move around a lot, by the way, just in case you don't able to get hit a lot throughout the majority of the battle, so I just want to classify that for the sake of the forms of convenience that was. So, yeah, it's gonna have to keep on shooting these guys no matter what, and sure enough, the more you do them, then, well, you can able to actually just achieve that. So, again, not much else to say about this boss fight, honestly. It's just the fact that it's a pretty simple and easy fight when you get the hang of it. So, anyways, let's go ahead and keep on grabbing some more blue eggs, so just in case we need those for the ammo count. So, because if we don't able to actually just able to waste it all, then, well, it might be hard to explain, because I know it has been such a long while, so... Ah, jeez Louise, man. Oh, come on! Okay, just only one more hit, and there we go. If you think this boss battle is done, well, turns out, first of all, we need to get rid of those enemies first, and that way we would be able to actually see what the actual thing is going to be coming up. And then if you're trying to able to take those guys down, then sure enough, you're able to actually unleash the final attack for himself, and that is the, well, let's just say a self-destruction kind of mode, and basically, yeah, self-destruct. So we have to, well, try to able to ignore him and try to back up a bit, and then if you go near to it, then I would say you would able to get hit or die, so... yes, you have to be very careful. And then, well, since the boss fight has been defeated, this means we get ourselves, what else? Another Jiggy. So, how's that for that? So anyway, and there's also another thing I want to discuss, and that is the fact that, of course, until next week, that WarioWare Get It Together for the Nintendo Switch will be releasing. So I'm super excited about the game, especially noticeable since I'm a really cool WarioWare fanatic, even though the only few exceptions being WarioWare Snapped on the DSiWare, and also Game & Wario for the Wii U, because, well, obviously I don't care for those two games, honestly. Just because they're nothing compared to the forms of how it does on the excellent WarioWare games, that's for sure, from the likes of the Game Boy Advance era, as well as the forms of some DS games, and also the early time on the Wii, and recently on the 3DS, being the forms of WarioWare Gold. By that time, as I said, until next week, get it together on the Switch. So, at least I'm still very glad that we're not going into the forms of Game & Wario Deluxe thing or something, because if that will be the case, then that'll be a total disaster. Which, I must admit though, because I don't know, I don't like it. I don't like the actual, the gameplay style from the likes of Game & Wario, because it's literally, to me, it's not fun at all. Honestly, I don't really care about the game. I mean, the only thing is cool about the game, usually because of how the fact that I will say that the art style does look pretty cool though. Even especially noticeable, this is actually the first time ever in a WarioWare game in HD, so because of that, I think it's actually a great way to noticing this. But I don't think the Wii U gamepad functions on certain games will work for me anyway, even though it does have a lot of capabilities, and I think to me that micro games is the most standout thing in WarioWare series of all time for me, so maybe I'm biased. So anyways, as you can see, that we're actually going to be able to meet up with Mumbo Jumbo again, ever since in Banjo-Kazooie, except now that the difference is this time, we can now able to actually take control of him. By all means by that, well, we do need to acquire the forms of Globo creature first before you're able to actually take control of Mumbo Jumbo. And basically what he can do is the fact that he can able to you know, move around and jump for a little bit, and eventually, whenever you stumble across his face pads, basically you can able to actually unleash his magical spells. Like, for instance, for example, in this stage right here, Mayahem Temple, we do need one of those, well, we do need able to actually activate something before we're able to get ourselves our next Jiggy and what have you. The next thing you notice is the fact that we can possibly able to actually just, well, do some more etc. stuff as to be expected, which I must admit though I do apologize for the actual commentary either, but you can also just manage to be able to use his staff by able to actually do a specific attacks, and then basically that deals amount of enemies. But since we've almost killed every single enemy in this world, this means that I don't think it's necessary to able to worry about them anytime soon. So in this case though, we're actually going to be taking control of this golden statue, which is pretty freaking incredible if you ask me. And basically what you can do with it is the fact that we can able to obviously take control of him, and I believe pressing the X button, assuming if you ever play this on the Xbox systems, basically you can do a simple kick, which you can able to actually get rid of these boulders, and eventually you're able to stumble across the forms of those two different doors that we can't able to actually access to with either Banjo or, well, Banjo and Kazooie. Well, because of that though, I'll explain more details about this and during at some point on Monday, and obviously with Wednesdays and Fridays essentially as well. So because of that, because again, this is going to be a huge adventure to deal with. So anyway, and there's also another thing I would like to discuss upon, and that is the fact that yes, we got ourselves our brand new Nintendo Switch game has been announced ever since joining forms of it yesterday actually. That's what appears to be another kind of a DS sequel of games. Like previously we had Dr. Karishima's brain training for the Nintendo Switch since last year, and same applies to forms of a worldwide classics games, but usually in the DS game it contains like 42 games, but in the forms of the Switch sequel they managed able to include 51 games as opposed to 42, which is a massive upgrade compared to the DS game. So because of that, and now we're about to be having ourselves the forms of Big Brain Academy on the Nintendo Switch, by the forms of the game calls it Big Brain Academy, Brain vs. Brain. So, yeah, that's actually pretty swell, and the release date for the game is going to be coming out during at some point in December, so specifically the final month of 2021, that's for sure. Mainly with like, well, let's say on the 3rd of December or something. Well, then again though, it has been a while since I actually managed to like mention something Nintendo related and all that stuff though, but usually relatively speaking that's as far as I can say about it. So anyway, so let's go ahead and activate that particular door that we've already did, and able to obtain another Jiggy here. Oh yeah, speaking of Jiggies though, is the fact that yes, just like in Banjo-Kazooie, that I don't think we can probably guarantee we can able to actually completely done with everything in the world, just because, well, obviously we still need to acquire a specific, you know, ability in order to able to actually get one of the Jiggies. And the biggest example on this particular world is that with that particular 2 or, well, let's just say 4 pillars that you can able to jump through, and basically that in order to able to go there and able to actually obtain a Jiggy from it, I would assuming that we're gonna have to able to actually just, well, just best be sure we're gonna have to able to actually just to keep on like, well, it's kind of hard to explain really. So oh yeah, there's a new thing they actually introduced in this title alone, and that's what appears to be the warping system. And basically this will come in handy, by the way, if you really having struggling just trying to able to walk back and forth within the huge areas in between. Thankfully the warp system is now a thing, so that way you can able to traverse through different segments of the world. So like for instance that we've already activated 2 warp portals, or these warp pads that either leads you to the entrance of the world, or it actually leads you to the Mumbo's house. And as a result though, it's a nifty feature, especially noticeable that, you know, this game is going to be super expansive compared to the forms of how it does in the original game. So yeah, you probably get the gist of it. So anyways, let's go ahead and aim for these little heads to able to actually open up the next area. So we can expect we can able to actually just shoot them with blue eggs, even though you have to be super accurate with all that aiming shots in mind. So yeah, you probably get the gist of how this is going. So anyway, and I suppose another thing I should probably explain about this as well, that usually relatively speaking, is the fact that unfortunately though, I no longer have the forms of some of these PS4 games I used to have. Likely the forms of Crash Bandicoot Insane Trilogy on the PlayStation 4, and same applies to Crash Team Racing Nitro Fueled, and also not to mention Crash Bandicoot 4 It's About Time. Well, the only reason being for this is because, well, usually at this point, I think I'm also focusing on one version as it is. That is on the Nintendo Switch versions of those 3 games, like I just said earlier. And because of that, though, there are a few problems I have with the PS4 versions of those games, such as, for instance, for example, I would say in no, not Banjo-Kazooie, because Banjo-Kazooie was on Microsoft this time around. Anyway, for Crash Bandicoot Insane Trilogy though, the only bad thing about the PS4 version is that the loading times really drag on. Like, especially noticeable if you jump to the next levels and stuff like that, which I will have to admit though right away, it does felt a bit pace breaker for my taste. So as a result though, I pretty much no longer have that version, sadly. But at the very least, I still enjoy the game, still. But for the time being, I'm pretty much going to be stuck with the Switch version as it is, because after all, I can play the actual remastered games on the go, which is awesome. And I think to me though, the Switch version might actually be my top priority for this point. So, sorry for the PlayStation 4 fans out there, but mainly because of how the fact that, well, at this point in time is the fact that we've only got about 4 more days to go until, you know, Sonic Colors Ultimate is going to be coming out. And, of course, we've only got about 32 days to go, like I said earlier, that we only got 32 days to go until, well, Super Monkey Ball Banana Mania for the PlayStation 4, along with any other systems we'll be releasing. So, still hyped about those two pretty much for me though, because I'm always a die-hard Sonic fan, along with the Super Monkey Ball series as well. So, yeah, you probably get the idea about that solution I was going to discuss upon, so. And also that, similar to the forms of in Banjo-Kazooie, that basically there are a few areas that has been blocked off on specific locations because, obviously, just like in a previous game, that we do need to require a specific transformation, although we're not going to mention about that right now, just because, well, we ended up trying to able to fly about and all that stuff, and meaning that we can able to actually get one of those familiar collectibles, like, for instance, the extra honeycomb piece, like I said before, and basically those things returned here. However though, the biggest difference is this time around though, is the fact that in order to able to actually get the health widgets, which you can able to upgrade themselves to your disposal, meaning about the fact that in order to able to increase your health, we need to meet up one of the characters in order to do that, rather than the forms of in Banjo-Kazooie, that basically every time you, and depending on what world you go to, that basically each and every single world in the original game does retain 2 extra honeycomb pieces at minimum in each world, with the only one exception being Spiral Mountain, because the Spiral Mountain world is basically a tutorial world, and basically that the more you collect them, then basically your health bar will extend. So that makes it totally obvious if you find the actual journey a lot difficult and challenging. So, but usually in this game this time around though, again, we'll explain more details about that in a second. So because of that, here we go inside the forms of that specific tower that we can actually entering into. And we're not going focusing on that from now on, because we need to head up here to open up the cage to able to actually access to the next area. So, in fact, speaking of the next area, so yeah, I think this is going to be one of those moments where basically we're going to have to be super stealthy here. So because of that, although at the moment right now, I'm actually going to be using my Halo 3 ODS controller edition, and unfortunately my controllers seem to have some analog stick drifting at the moment. So, and by the way, if you manage able to get into the brambles and manage to make a sound, basically you get kicked out. So it's all about stealth here. So because of that though, yeah, I think they could work out to do that a lot throughout the majority of the game, if I'm guessing correctly. So because of that, Hopefully it's not that much of an issue though, even though the first time around I somehow failed on that because, well, at first I thought that my analog stick precisioning stuff wasn't exactly the most delicate thing in the world, but thanks to my analog stick drifting, that it allows me to able to, well, be super stealthful and also just managed able to bypass this part super easily. Especially noticeable that unlike, you know, Nintendo Switch Joy-Cons or Pro Controllers or something, that it does manage to bother some people. But personally speaking, in some segments like this, it doesn't bother me at all whenever I stumble across the analog stick drifting on my Xbox 360 controller, which is fine by me, even though, mind you, I've already got the spare controller for the sake of, like, achievements required for Sonic Adventure 2, for multiplayer, for battle modes and stuff like that. But hey, at least that's something to behold, so... And also, another thing is worth mentioning for us that I also know, another thing is worth noting for us, the fact that I've already mentioned about the forms of the bad load times on the PS4 version of Insane Trilogy, I must be honest here. Well, mind you, thankfully the Switch version does manage to speed things up a notch, and, because it was on a game card and stuff like that, so I guess that's a good thing for my liking, so... And, during the forms of Team Racing Nitro Fueled, I don't normally play the game that much though, because I think I might as well stick with one version as this, because trying to play the game with multiple versions of the game can be multitasking for my taste. So at this point in time, I think I should probably stick with the Switch version as well. Well, mind you, the Switch version does have a pretty bad loading times either, but I can at least still manage to able to enjoy the game and play on the go and stuff like that, which is a good thing for my liking. So, and also in Crash Bandicoot 4, it's about time that on the PlayStation 4 version I'm no longer going to be having, because, well, in addition to bad loading times, if you keep on trying to do with the forms of the Perfect Relics run, and also that I get this strong sense of feeling that there's a very annoying collusion thing. What if you're trying to deal with the forms of Bear's repeating level, for instance, that if you watch the Categories video about the forms of the miserable world, or miserable experience of Crash Bandicoot 4, that he complains about the forms of that specific pixel-perfect hit detection with the forms of trying to break those boxes in the Polar Bear section. So because of that though, and yeah, I just have no idea why I just managed to able to actually sit for all that. Well, nothing too negativity about it, it's just a bit of a nitpicking collusion detection or hit detection error, so because of that, thankfully on the Switch version, which I'm still gonna keep, does manage to fix that issue, so thankfully I don't have to come across it from there. So, as a result though, yeah, I basically no longer have the PS4 version of Crash 4, sadly. But, regardless of such, it is still a fantastic looking game, still. But, regardless of such though, it's just a bit of a, the hit detection problem with the Bear's repeating level with those boxes and stuff like that, which I always have a lot of complaints about. And also, I no longer have Spyro United Trilogy on the PlayStation 4, because, Jesus Christ, the amount of gigabytes they have, it's way too much. Probably because of the forms of, usually it requires a download thing during the course of you trying to able to actually access to games 2 and 3 on that specific remaster, but because as a result though, I just have no idea why they took up so much space on my PS4 at the moment, but and as a result though, I also no longer have that as well, sadly, but regardless of such, it's usually how this goes basically, so... Anyway, and also another game I no longer have on my PlayStation 4, and that is Burnout's Paradise Remastered, purely because of how the fact that, well, honestly, I think I always play the PlayStation 4 whenever I was going to be able to play some of my interest titles, such as, for instance, Sonic the Hedgehog games, Super Monkey Ball games, and eventually, like, you know, Kingdom Hearts games, which I've already got still, because I'm a die-hard Kingdom Hearts fan as well, and, exponentially, that we might be able to get some more PS4 games for sure, but if not, then probably I might try to pick up Rayman Legends on the PS4 or something, even though, mind you, it's pretty much exactly the same as in any other multiple versions of Rayman Legends, for sure. But regardless of everything else though, yeah. And by the way, there's another stealth section right there, but again, thanks to my analog drifting, this means I can able to do that section just fine. So, anyway, so here we go with another, you know, upgrade that we actually got from the likes of gem jars. And basically, we got ourselves the forms of the ability to able to grab onto ledges. And also, you can able to actually, well, trying to climb through them too. So even then, though, it's a pretty nifty, upgrade in theory, or ability I should say, and that way you can able to actually just scale through walls and all that jazz. So, pretty nifty actually. So either way though, let's just go ahead and continue things on here, and I suppose that we're pretty much almost done with this world, although again, mind you, we're probably not going to go for 100% yet for this world specifically, because, well, then again, much like the forms of, you know, much like the forms of how it does it on, Banjo-Kazooie, then we might have to backtrack for a bit, so... Alright, so here's the new character introduced in this game called Humba Wumba, and basically, she's equivalent to Mumbo Jumbo, well, usually except the fact that she doesn't have a skull or something like that. Because usually, that, as I said this before, much like in Banjo-Kazooie, transformations are returning here, so because of that though, the only way you can transform into stuff this time around is that you have to throw the forms of a Globo inside of that particular magic water, or the Wumbo pool, as what's known in here, and if you jump right into it, then soon enough you transform into something, so because of that, yeah, it's very similar to the likes of the original game, except no need for Mumbo tokens or anything else like that this time around, which, either way, it knows where it stands, so... And of course that, much like the forms of, I would say in Banjo-Kazooie as well, that basically if you leave the world and then trying to go even further away from a world, I'm presuming that you will transform back to your normal self, I'm presuming so. So, well, first of all, you need to leave the world in order to do that, I was assuming for that, so... Anyway, so we somehow managed to transform into ourselves into a, something like a stone transformation, which I don't really know what the transformation is though, I must be honest here. But anyway, let's just go ahead and walk over to the entrance right there, well, almost right near to the entrance, because of that particular familiar extra honeycomb piece just right over there. And it's a good thing we actually grab all three of these basically, so yeah, that should be alright and such, so... Anyway, so let's just go ahead and continue moving on here, so because of that though, we can able to actually do, I would say the next Jiggy we can able to obtain, and that is of course that, yeah, most likely the forms of in Banjo-Kazooie, that some of these Jiggies requires you to able to use the transformations, like for example in Bubblegulp Swamp, that you're gonna have to force the able to actually transform into the crocodile transformation in order to able to actually just go in there. And same applies to the forms of the first encounter with, well, let's just say a bear race on that particular Freezy Peak level. And basically, for the first time, you're gonna have to, for the first match, you're gonna have to be the walrus transformation. And in the second round, well, after when you have obtained the speed shoes, and basically that way you can meet up with you know, the same bear, whenever you're able to do the first round and all that stuff, which, either way. So, oh, and another thing I wanted to classify for mentioning this as well, that Sonic Forces Speed Battle does have a brand new stage by the forms of Planet Wisp, because obviously with Sonic Colors Ultimate it's on its way. Speaking of Sonic Colors Ultimate actually, for I've seen the reviews of the game, it's actually pretty darn good. Like, it was certainly pretty good than I was expecting, because I almost thought to myself that it was kind of worrying me at first, until when some critics seems to think that it wasn't nearly as good as the original, but it turns out it was still good reviews-wise. Like, for instance, some of them gives it like an 8 out of 10, which is pretty good, and also some of them are, well, recommended and all that jazz, which I think is top-notch, and everything else, things considered, it's actually pretty good, which I was really hoping that would be the case if I was trying to able to pick it up the game. Unfortunately though, that it does get pretty downhill though, for when it comes to getting Sonic Colors Ultimate in European countries, because originally I was expecting to try to get it in day 1 on 7th of September, that doesn't seem the case when I was trying to get the game physically that I was going to talk about, with the game case and discs and game card on the Switch version's case. Sadly though, I can't get it on day one because apparently in Europe it's been delayed due to the forms of the EMEA marketing strategies or something, which as a result, I got kicked off from that. So because of that though, I'll have to wait for a bit longer. Well, nowhere near as long as the forms of how it does it on several months, thankfully. So it's just literally like a month wait. So, but anyway, oh yeah, this is one of these things I was gonna able to mention about, and that is the fact that yes, in the forms of several other you know, challenges, like for instance, as you can see, we ended up in the forms of Mayahem Kickball. And basically, it's kind of like football, except that, first of all, you do have a time limit, and also you're gonna be able to, like, score your own goals rather than just anyone else's score. And, well, for the quarterfinals, it's pretty simple. You're gonna be able to beat anyone else before the time runs out. Although in the second round and onwards, though, it gets a bit tough, though, especially in the semi-finals match, that we've now come across into ourselves these red balls. And by the way, those red balls will subtract your points, so yeah, keep that in mind and try to aim for the yellow balls, because obviously if you don't get enough points compared to the other player, then you simply lose the round. But thankfully that you don't need to deal with the forms of going back to the beginning, because you can simply just retry as many times you want, so that's a good thing, I suppose. So anyway, so let's go and try this again, and hopefully we're not gonna mess this up completely though, thankfully, which I was hoping that would be the case. So, and yeah, aside from that, there's not much else I can say, honestly. I mean, usually I mention quite a few bits and bobs here and there. Oh, and of course, the next Mario Kart Tour event is going to be on its way on Wednesday. I'm not exactly sure what this is going to be, though, but I'll point it out until specifically on, well, let's just say on Monday, whenever we're able to move on to the next world, because then again, as I mentioned this before, I would have wished if I was going to able to try to 100% everything in the whole entire world, like Mayhem Temple, but I do know there's actually a trick to this, but it might be might actually be quite kind of difficult to execute it if you try to pull this off properly. So there we go, we now finally win the semi-finals, and since we've won the semi-finals, and now let's move on to the final round, which at this point some of these players can get a bit aggressive at points, so but hopefully we'll try to cope with this. So, but I digress. So either way though, and also, for what I've heard about the forms of, well, I've already mentioned about the forms of the rumored Nintendo Direct coming this month in particular. Well, apparently, though, that this week we didn't have one, just because, obviously, that, with shadow drops and all that stuff, yeah, that's the only thing that's kind of bothers me for a bit, and that is the forms of, yet again, that, remember I mentioned this before about recently that, you know, Big Brain Academy, Brain vs. Brain for the Nintendo Switch has recently announced, but because of the forms of their Twitter shadow drop just managed to come in once again. So because of that, yay, we're going back into the Twitter shadow drop things, which it doesn't bother me this year though, unlike any forms of last year's terrible year. That does bother me a little bit because, well, I just wish hoping that if the Directs were able to actually just, well, it's kind of hard to say about this honestly, because, oh well, no big deal. So since we win the tournament, and that means, of course, we get ourselves the another Jiggy, so huzzah. Even though, mind you, that usually relatively speaking, that, yeah, it's top notch. So, anyway, so let's go ahead and go right near to Humbo Wumba's tent, and because of that though, we can able to actually just able to actually transform back into our normal selves, so we can at least expect to do this, so but anyway, and I guess there's not much else I can say when it comes to today's discussion. Like, I've already mentioned about this a lot, so but anyway. And there's also another thing I would like to mention. Sadly, I no longer have Sega Superstars Tennis for the Xbox 360. I don't know why. Mainly because I wasn't keen on the game that much. Mainly because I'm used to with the archaic style gameplay when it comes to like Sega Superstars or something. Or possibly maybe because I'm pretty much used to with the superior Sonic and Sega crossover games when it comes to kart racing games. Yes, I'm talking about Sonic and Sega All-Stars Racing, along with All-Stars Racing Transform. So because of that though, those games are honestly, my top priority when it comes to those games, because I'm pretty sure I'm good at them. Unlike Sega Superstars Tennis, that I'm somewhat mediocre at the game, so because of that though, yeah, it's gonna be one of those moments that I somehow just give up playing on it. So, anyways, here's the, I would say this is the last page for Mayahem Temple for the Cheeto Spellbook. So, at least we're able to actually gun every single pages on that. Yeah, that's the Jiggy I was talking about, and basically, that I would classify for able to get that Jiggy from earlier on, but of course we do need that specific ability in mind until whenever we get into later on, if we grab, you know what I mean, some more notes here and there, so I guess that makes it totally obvious for the sake of time, so but I digress. So, I gotta say, I do really like the atmosphere of this particular level, even though it almost reminds me of the forms of Mumble Mountain from the original game, except, well, usually in size, it's gigantic and stuff, so yeah, that seems totally obvious, but that's differences between the two anyway, so. And of course, that much like the original game, we got ourselves these little green boots, makes a return right here, and basically this allows you to able to walk a bit faster if you're trying to able to go through like mud and stuff like that, but if you get it, then obviously it cancels out your ability and stuff like that, so. Speaking of items, here's another new item, which appears to be the Stop Honeycomb. And basically, if you stumble across the honeycomb that features an exclamation mark, basically it activates like something like a timing kind of syndrome. Like basically when that thing lights up a bit, and then you have to do a specific timing or what have you, because if you accidentally manage to able to hit the left side of the actual honeycomb health, basically you're pretty much down to 1 health, and if you manage to hit all the way to the right, basically you get full health. So it's a pretty nifty item to have, especially noticeable if you're almost low on health. So yeah, it's a pretty good dealio, but hey. So let's see, we off by 1 Jinjo left, and also we got 1 Jiggy left, that as you saw, that we don't think we can able to make it at this point yet, until we... Ow. That really hurts. Screw you, enemies like that. But anyway, I don't exactly know about the enemies' names, I must be honest here, just because, well, then again, it has been a while since I actually played Banjo-Kazooie stuff, so... Well, at least ever since in playing as Banjo and Kazooie Fighter in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, so... But I do definitely know there might be some tracks in Banjo-Tooie do make a comeback in Smash Ultimate for sure. Well, then again though, it has been a couple of days since I actually played Smash Ultimate ever since in No More Heroes 3 Spirit Battles. So, but either way though, let's just go and take a flight to all the way up there to able to get ourselves the last Jinjo in this world. And it turns out, I think this is a brown color. And I think that pretty much do it for now on, even though, mind you, we've only got 1 collectible left in this world specifically, and that is of course the last Jiggy, but then again, we'll be back for that in the future, assuming if we're able to actually access to more abilities, so that should be mainly for the doubt. So, and of course we got every single extra honeycomb pieces, and also all of these missing pages, and also learned all of the moves, and all of the musical notes that we actually got, all the Jinjos collected, and also Globos that we've actually gone through. Well, with only one exception, mind you, being the last Jiggy, but then again, we'll be back for that in the future, so... Anyway, so now we're done with that, and now we can able to head back into the Jiggy Wiggy's temple, and since we actually got about 11 Jiggies so far, so this means we can not only deal with 1 challenge, but also another challenge as well. Even though in Challenge 2, it requires you to able to collect 4 Jiggies, so should be simple when you get the hang of it though. So let's just go ahead and do Jiggy Wiggy's Challenge 2, so hopefully we would able to fill up the piece and stuff like that. I bet there was actually more puzzle challenges this time around compared to the forms of how it does it for the original game does only contain 7 challenges, like basically for that cheat code if you try to able to complete Basil's challenges and stuff, so I totally get that, so... So it looks like we've completed challenge number 2, and basically that will unlock another world, so... But then again, we'll get to the next world and doing at some point on Monday, so next should be exciting to able to actually see what's the next world is going to be. And it turns out it was almost right near to the Honey Hive, so... And this will pretty much open up the second world, and apparently we're going underground, or to be more specifically, we're going into the mines, so... That should be interesting, all things considered, but hopefully, yeah. And yep, it looks like it's going to tell us you've got enough Jiggies to obtain Jiggies Challenge 3. I'll have to admit though, I might as well do one more Jiggy Wiggies Challenge or what have you before you're able to unlock the next world. Although, mind you, I'm probably not going to get into the next world just yet, because obviously we'll go for these worlds in a chronological order, very similar to the original game, so we can expect we can able to do the similar thing as it does it previously, so... Anyways, let's go ahead and fill those pieces in, and eventually it gets a bit tough though, especially noticeable when some of these pieces are split up, so to be expected with most challenging stuff like later on. And since we've completed Jiggy Wiggy's challenge number 3, and that means, of course, we can able to open up the next world. So because of that, then again, it's not going to happen until specifically in the future, because eventually most of these worlds are going to be massive, and also it will take longer to complete. So anyways, let's see what this is going to open up. In the Pine Grove in Isle of Hinks, and basically it's going to be almost right near to, is that supposed to be Witchy World? Well, apparently it looks like it though. And yeah, that's the only thing it does manage to able to get it for, so there we go. Even though we haven't got enough, you know, Jiggies to able to do challenge 4, but that's okay, because as soon as we leave, I wonder how much I do need. Well, after this little sequence is finished, I need 14, so I'm 3 left, so that's okay for me, because obviously I'll be back for more of those later on, so... Ah, oh, jeez, they're kind of similar to those bird-like enemies in Click Clockwood, aren't they? Well, nothing matters too much about it, because obviously that we need to go here to able to progress, so anyways, let's just go ahead and go through here, trying to able to... Oh, this is the next location we're about to be entering into, so in this case, we can't do anything about it until we meet up with Gem Jars and able to learn another move, which this time we have the Fire Eggs, which, yes, they're now able to have multiple variations of those eggs. So in addition with Blue Eggs, we now have Fire Eggs. And basically what this means is the fact that they all, like, become fired and all that stuff. And in order to switch between them, you have to press the bumper buttons in order to able to switch these different kind of eggs. Although I'm pretty sure on the N64 version that you have to press, like, I don't know, C buttons or something, even though it has been a while since I actually played the N64 version throughout the game, so yeah, forgive me if I botched it, so... Anyways, and then there's also another extra honeycomb piece, as you saw, that is just underneath the actual, the honey hive itself. And before we're able to actually do anything else, before we end off the video, I need to grab these more music notes just up in the top there. And hopefully, if I was going to grab onto the ledge, and sure enough, we're able to get some more, so... Even though eventually in, I would say in Grunty's Revenge on the Game Boy Advance, along with Nuts and Bolts, that they'll go back into the forms of the singular notes. So, it's want to classify that for the sake of time, so... Here we go, into the forms of Honeybees Hive. Okay, so we have Honeybee as a new character introduced in this game, so... And she's actually act out the forms of training somebody or health witches to able to increase, so... It does kind of reminds me of the forms of the Zelda-like, with the forms of obtain heart containers and stuff, except that this is a Banjo game after all, so and basically, since we actually got enough of those extra honeycomb pieces, as far as I'm concerned, well, I don't know what I'm usually saying for this point right now, but anywho, so... yeah, that's as far as I can usually try and say about this for the sake of time from now on. So, anywho, so, yeah, looks like we're about to be able to actually just to, yeah, let's do a trade. And, since we got 4 of them from now on, and basically that way it gives me, well, extra energy of health. So in this case, we actually got not 1, but 2 health, witches. So, then of course in the next few will have to be requires, 5, so we can expect that. So, anyways, I think suffice to say we got the endings off here. So join me next time on Let's Play Banjo-Tooie. It's the fact that we'll get started with the forms of the second world of the game. So I'll see you guys until on Monday. Later, fellas.